welcome to today's episode of Sober on the Mic. My name is Lauren, and today I am joined by a colleague and a friend of mine named Adam. Adam's going to tell us his story and how he got to being the same as me, the community development lead for Together Drug and Alcohol Services in Exeter. And where are you? North Devon, you're based, aren't you? Yeah. We've had everyone that's quite Exeter-centric so far, so I'm quite excited to have someone from your neck of the woods. But we'll start, as we always do, with the 20 quick-fire questions. So, question number one. Adam, how old are you?
I am 43.
43. And where are you from?
I'm from Birmingham.
Birmingham. What's your star sign?
Scorpio.
Oh, I didn't know you were a Scorpio.
Yes.
Scorpios are quite feisty, and I've always known you to be really gentle and calm.
Maybe I'll just break the mould a little bit, maybe. I don't know, but I probably do have that side to me. You just don't see it at work.
Don't see
much,
it.
Maybe, yeah.
What one word would your friends describe you as?
Open.
Open, yeah. Kind of have to be in this world, don't you? Yeah. What habit do you do to keep you grounded?
I kind of nightly check in with myself.
Yeah.
Every evening, I have to.
Yeah.
Just to kind of, just pay attention to what's going on up there.
Yeah.
And how the day's gone and what it's brought up for me.
That's brilliant. Who is your hero?
I was thinking about that because I knew this one was coming, and it's always a hard one for me to. I'm going to say my mum. I know that's a bit cheesy, but definitely when I see what she's gone through, how much she was there for me. I can't think of anyone else. That tops that really. So
most people pick family members.
I'd be good. Okay. I was being really like cringy and cheesy saying that, but it's true.
Everyone picks family members. Okay. What's a song that always lifts your mood?
I can't think. I think it's called A Beautiful World by there's a Samoan singer. I can't think what his name is, but there's a I'll have to link. You'll have to link it. I'll find you a link and send it to you.
Link for it. Yeah. Oh, that sounds lush. Who would play you in the movie of your life?
Oh God. Johnny Depp. How about that? Yeah. Just to kind of I'll say Johnny Depp.
Yeah. If you could have a dinner party with a famous person, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh, these are tough.
There are, don't they?
Dinner party. I'd probably have. I'm a bit of a history nerd, so I'd probably have like Julius Caesar and Napoleon and people like that. I reckon
that would be a good one, especially at the dinner table.
My mum, Julius Caesar.
And Napoleon.
Yeah. That'd be a laugh.
They'd probably kick off at the dinner table, wouldn't they?
Maybe you, Lauren, you'll get an invite as well, I guess.
Oh, I'd like that. I've got a couple of questions for Napoleon that would be fun. Yeah. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
It's going to be a boring one. It's going to be flying. I'd love to.
That's a good one, though, isn't it? Because you avoid the commute.
Yeah, and avoid the commute. I can just go on holiday whenever I click my fingers and fly to Spain, wherever. Yeah, keep it simple.
It's ideal. Oh, I just might pop to Spain. Lovely. Just nip over. Why would you not? Are you a cat person or a dog person?
I'm a bit of both. I've got 2 cats and a dog, so I qualify as both, I think.
Basically, Dr. Dolittle.
Yeah.
Right. And then to the more kind of bespoke questions for what we're here for. So when you were using, what was your drug of choice?
Heroin and crack cocaine.
Yep. And how old were you when you realised you had an issue with substances?
Quite young. I started when I was about 15, and it kind of hit me in the face that, yes, this was a problem, probably pretty quickly. So age 16, 17.
Yeah.
First time I kind of tried to stop and realised it was going to be not as quite simple as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
It kind of, okay, I've got a problem here. So quite young, 17, I'd say.
And how long have you been drug-free for?
I'm hitting 6 years in March.
That's good, that. 6 years, isn't it? That's a good innings, that. If that was a kid, he's in school, he's doing all right.
Yeah, he's growing up. Yeah.
So kind of that's it for the quickfire questions. Now we kind of go into your story and kind of peeling advice and kind of where you landed and kind of working in substance services. So from however you want to start, tell us your story.
Okay, well, I do tend to waffle once I start going
That's backwards. Fine, you
so
waffle
feel
away.
free to shut me off if I'm
waffle
going
away.
So yeah, I mean, my story is probably typical of a lot of people. I actually grew up in a really loving home in quite a nice part of Birmingham, actually Solihull, which isn't actually kind of Birmingham, but it's close. It's very close. And yeah, one of four children. I got three brothers. I was the middle child, which seems to be a bit of a theme I've noticed with people in recovery. There's a lot of middle
It
children in
is. It
recovery.
is. Middle children are a
I sat there
thing.
in the middle, and things were pretty stable. I was pretty good at school. um, Nice little friend group. But then, without going into the gory details, I had some pretty horrific kind of traumas that I went through around the cusp of the time I was transitioning from primary school to secondary school. So
Right.
there was a few things that happened. There was some really nasty traumas. I was exposed to some really kind of something really horrific,
Yeah.
which really traumatized me and definitely changed me. I noticed the
Yeah.
change. It was looking back, I can see it was almost like a switch had been flicked. So I went from this quite happy, young, confident young man to someone very anxious and very unsure of himself. And then my parents divorced as well, so the family dynamic broke up.
Hmm.
We moved from this lovely family home we had to a bit of a rougher estate, and this had quickly followed the kind of trauma I was just talking about. So I definitely changed,
So
and I
your
found
whole
that,
world just changed
yeah,
quickly.
my personality changed and my confidence just drained away, and I just became a very, very different person. And it's hard to pinpoint which of those things. The switch to secondary school is traumatic for some kids, and
Mm.
it was for
Yeah.
me. The kind of experiences I had were definitely traumatic, and the break of the kind of family unit was traumatic as well. So any one of those things might have been enough, but I think the three together just really kind of did some damage
Yeah.
internally. And then yeah, I just kind of drifted along, still doing okay, but not okay myself. I just felt really disconnected from everyone.
Mm.
Yeah, I struggled to make friends. I just felt very isolated, even from my family. And I was a very unhappy child, basically. But on the surface, I would still have looked okay. And then around age kind of 14 is when it kind of changed. The kind of peer groups at school were starting to experiment with alcohol
Yeah.
and substances. And this council estate where I was now living, there was this group of kind of older men that had all fallen into heroin use. But I kind of looked up to these. They were the cool kids on the estate,
Mm.
and I started knocking around with them. And it was just a very quick progression, really. I had these really profound experiences every time I tried a new substance. So I was a very kind of a stereotypical drug user, if you like. The progression from alcohol to cannabis
Yeah.
to amphetamines to party drugs, and then I found heroin, and it just I was still in secondary school, so I was in the last year of school, and I tried it for the first time. It kind of gave me what I thought I was missing. Really, it gave me this kind of suit of armor.
Mm.
It gave me this wrapping of cotton wool. It took all my anxieties away.
Yeah.
It made me feel very calm and very safe, and it was just a really profound kind of experience for me. And this would have been 1998, 99.
Yeah.
And the drug education just wasn't out there then, really.
No.
My only experience of heroin was in a needle, through Train Spotting, the film.
Yeah.
And I'm presented with this stuff on a foil that people are smoking, and they seem pretty okay. And I just kind of thought, why not? And very quickly I realised that yes, this was a problem. I was using it before school. I was using
Yeah.
it every chance I could get. I was kind of walking around like a bit of a zombie.
Mm. So this
And
is
then
while you're at secondary school, so
yeah, yeah,
GCSE time?
yeah. And I was very good at functioning. So, I think people kind of knew something was up, but because it was mixed in with lots of other drug use, lots of cannabis use and stuff, I think
Yeah.
people kind of pinned how I was looking and acting on that,
Yeah.
and maybe not giving it the attention it deserved. And I was also still functioning. I was still able to go to school. I was still sitting my GCSE, still managed to get some GCSEs. I still found some work after school and started college, and I was somehow managing to maintain. But the thing about addiction is it's kind of progressive, and it will constantly get worse, and it did get worse. So
Yeah.
I couldn't keep that up for long. I was able to get a job and hold down a job, but that was mostly because I had my parents looking out for me,
Yeah.
and helping me to function. And probably a
Did your
couple of years.
parents sorry, Ads, did your parents have a clue that this was kind of going on for
Not
you?
really. No, they were dealing with their own stuff, and they were, parents to four children as well as stepchildren
Mm,
as well, and that they had their own lives going on, and that became a resentment which I had to work on. But
mm,
you know, no, not really. My brothers were misbehaving in different ways, and they had their hands full, trust me. But then they obviously knew something was up, and one day they kind of just searched my room and found these bottles of illicit methadone that I was storing as a backup.
yeah,
And then it all came out, and it was all pretty horrendous, and the guilt and the shame, and the just was a really deep wound for me. But my parents, who I did love, my stepdad, who I loved, because my mum had remarried by that point, and my mum, it was really tough. So my answer to that was withdraw even more.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I
As
managed to
shame
move,
does,
yeah,
makes
and
you
I,
totally withdraw.
and I managed to move out the family home into a little flat with a girlfriend I had at the time who wasn't a user. Um, yeah, and it dawned on me that I had a problem. And I think I first referred into services for a bit of help around quite early, age 19, 20
Mm,
maybe. Drug services were very different then. It was just, here's your prescription, off you
yeah,
go kind of thing. Um, and yeah, I just kind of was just a functioning heroin addict for a long time, holding down fairly decent jobs, just about, managing to maintain it. I was always on the precipice of a disaster of in one shape or form. And like I said a minute ago, it's progressive. So crack cocaine then kind of hit the scene a bit harder than it had up until
mm,
that point. And then my addiction became a dual addiction, and it just became much, much harder to manage. Um, I was always kind of getting sacked from jobs for stealing from work, and
right,
finding different ways to get my fix and get my money for it. But I had a bit of I was able to kind of present well if I put a bit of
yeah.
effort in. I was always able to find another job and just kind of
Just keep
function.
on getting by,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly that. But there was no living involved.
No.
I was numbing all my feelings. I was a terrible boyfriend to be with. I don't know
Mm,
why, I ended up in some of these relationships. They were always a disaster, and I just wasn't equipped to be a decent partner to anyone. But I just drifted on like that for years and years. And I got a job with British Telecom, and they thought really highly of me. And I worked in a call centre, and I'd either be nodding off at my desk, and it's because I was out all night partying or whatever,
yeah,
or I was falling asleep in a toilet, or I was ringing up sick with imaginary illnesses because
yeah.
I was in withdrawal. But they thought quite a lot of me. I managed to hold down a job with British Telecom for 12 years with a full blown heroin addiction, and it was just,
Which is
you know,
crazy.
it is a bit,
Holding
it
the
is a
job
bit.
down for 12
But
years.
it was so counterproductive in my mind. That was, I'm okay
Yeah,
because so and so and so and so, they haven't had a job in 10 years, and blah blah blah. Whereas me, I'm okay. I'm not that bad. I'm not that bad
yeah.
because
I'm
I've still got a job.
working. I've
I'm
got a
working.
home.
I'm not stealing
Yeah,
off my mum like my mate is.
yeah,
I'm not using IV intravenously yet, which I did end up doing, but at that
yeah,
point I hadn't. And it's very easy to convince myself that things weren't as bad as they could be. But things do get that bad.
yeah.
Things consistently got worse. And what I noticed after, my kind of addiction rumbled on for 20 years is that the drugs definitely stopped working. And that suit of armor it gave me at the start just kind of disintegrated over the years. And by the end of it, by kind of age, I don't know, 30, early 30s, I was just an anxious mess. Even when I
Yeah.
was fully loaded up on heroin, I couldn't look anyone in the eye. I couldn't, I was starting to develop these nervous tics, and my anxiety was just going off the scale. And it was just becoming harder and harder to function. And I'd kind of made this kind of deal with myself that if I wasn't off it by 30, I'd go to rehab. Like, this deluded thinking of mine that
Yeah.
I could just click my fingers when I'm ready and just go to rehab,
Yeah.
like it's that easy. Um, and then, yeah, I'd got this opportunity to leave BT. They were offering these voluntary redundancy packages out. And I got a year's salary tax free, and there's me thinking, oh my god, I can use this. I can go traveling. I can, I'll fix
Yeah.
myself, with this money. So I kind of gave up this job that I loved and was kind of keeping me trapped though in a way,
Mm.
and yeah, and that was just such a bad plan really because I quickly smoked my way through kind of £15,000 worth of
Yeah.
drugs. And then was looking at this kind of 10 grand I've got left and thought I need to do something with this. And I randomly booked these kind of like round the world travel experiences, like these group tours. So I flew out to Mexico City in full withdrawal. This is the craziness
Oof.
of it. In full withdrawal on like a 24-hour round trip because I had to take two different connecting flights. And I'm in full withdrawal
Oh my
on a
God,
flight next to
Adam.
Mexico City with this group of Mexican nuns sat next to me. And I turned up and had to meet these like 15 strangers to do this overland travel tour from Mexico City into Canada. So I'm on this truck camping out along the way. But I'd spent like 6 grand on, and I couldn't tell anyone I was in withdrawal. I was like, going to places like the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone and Vegas. And after the first week, and the withdrawals had started to kind of fade away, and it's amazing what you can go through as far as withdrawals if you
Yeah.
can't tell anyone about it or can't let on about it.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you can kind of just go
Yeah,
through.
that's fascinating.
Well, and yeah, I knew I couldn't get any, so the part of the psychological power of it was taken away, and somehow I got through it. Um, yeah, and I had this this amazing time. Met this amazing girl, kind of fell in love. Thought everything was okay now. As soon as I landed back in Birmingham, sort of 6 weeks later,
Mm.
I was using again.
That's always the
Yeah,
way, isn't it? It's
yeah.
always the way.
I thought I could fix myself by just escaping for a bit and seeing the world and having my eyes opened and like no, it was deeper than that. So then I thought, oh, maybe I just need to try that one more time. So then I booked a second trip. So then I flew out to Africa again in withdrawal. I landed in Nairobi in Kenya. And I went to this kind of mud hut and I was just kind of withdrawing there again for 7 days without being able to tell anyone. And then I did a trip down the kind of east coast of Africa, and it's looking at all the poverty and I thought that would open my eyes to how
Yeah.
good I've got it and that would kind of click some kind of change within me, but no it didn't. I flew
Yeah.
back to Birmingham 2 months later and again I was using really quickly. So I kind of then everyone had kind of got sick of me. My parents was kind of at the end of their tether. My partner had kind of kicked me out and I ended up kind of street homeless for the first time. And it was just really, really scary.
Yeah, I can
Having
imagine it was.
those bits of support that I clung on to, suddenly kind of withdrawn. It was a real eye opener for me. Suddenly I was running out of money, had nowhere to live. No family who wanted anything to do with me, and it was terrifying, really. But in hindsight, some people call it the gift of desperation.
Yeah.
It was that for me. It was. I take my hat off to people who can rough sleep for extended periods of time because after I was only rough sleeping for 4 or 5 weeks, but it was the worst experience of my life. And I was very close to just kind of ending it all and giving up, but
Yeah.
I did get an opportunity through our local service provider to go to rehab,
Mm.
and it was my first time. I didn't know what to expect. And it was very scary, but I didn't have many options. If I did have other options, I probably would have chose them.
Yeah.
But that's that gift I'm talking about. I didn't have any other choices, and I went to this men's rehab, and it was an abstinence program. I'd never even heard of 12 steps, and never been to a meeting. And bear in mind, I've been a heroin addict for 20 years by this point.
Yeah.
Never been to a group. Didn't even know what NA was. And I went in there thinking I just had a problem with heroin.
Mm.
And I didn't need to stop alcohol, I didn't need to stop cannabis.
Yeah.
And they were preaching abstinence to me. And I had to sit in on groups as part of the kind of rehab program. They also took us to 12-step meetings every evening. And it was just a bit of an eye-opener for me. I bought into it. And I liked what I saw from the people around me, the peers in recovery. I
Yeah.
liked how they were conducting themselves. I liked how they carried themselves. I liked how honest they were. And I realised some of the stuff I needed to do if I really wanted to beat this. I'd always kind of most people in addiction we like a quick fix.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think in my gut I knew that I was going to have to do things to get well that were going to make me uncomfortable. I was
Yep.
going to have to get honest and talk about things I maybe didn't want to share. I was going to have to sit in groups and talk about myself and meet new people. This stuff I found really anxiety inducing and
Yeah.
scary. I'd have to get some therapy and some counselling and really get to kind of explore some of the deep-seated trauma stuff and
Which
address
is
that.
really
I
scary.
think I knew deep down that's what I needed to do, but there was that part of me that was looking for the quick fix, and it was
Yeah.
maybe I don't need to do that. Yeah, maybe if
Yeah.
I can just have a detox and stay clean for a few weeks, I won't need to do any of that hard
Yeah.
stuff, and getting by on my own thinking. My own thinking was in a bit of a mess. I was really irrational. I was very resentful and I was very scared. And I kept a little journal for a while in the run up to me going to rehab. And it's really illuminating to read back on because I was so unwell.
Yeah.
I was so paranoid and I was just so resentful and I was so blaming everyone else. And it's not easy to read back. I'm so glad I only kept it going for a few days, but just those few days, it really shows how unwell I was. And in
Yeah.
the
And how
moment,
far you'd come as well.
yeah, that as well. But the thing is, you don't realise how unwell you are. You don't
No.
realise how disordered your thinking has become, how irrational it's become, until you come out the other side of it. And yeah, so that was my first exposure to real recovery. It didn't quite go to plan. I completed the rehab journey. I did relapse not long after I came out, just because I wasn't doing the things I wasn't keeping a routine.
Yep.
I wasn't going to groups. I wasn't being honest. I was kind of, I was wearing this mask like I always did and pretending I was okay and pretending I knew what I was talking about without really being truthful about what I was feeling and what I was thinking. And I didn't put enough effort into building that kind of network
Yeah.
around me. And so, yeah, it went wrong the first time. Um, I went back in again the second time. I don't know what it was. I went back in about a year later. So this was about 8 years ago, and it was just an absolute disaster. The first time I was really, I think I was really taken aback by recovery and what it
Yeah.
meant, and what I was seeing in these people I was meeting for the first time, these kind of peers in recovery who had never been exposed to before. The second time, I don't know. I think I was carrying some added guilt and shame about relapsing,
Yep.
and I went back in there, and I was just a disaster. I managed to get my bank card. I was creeping out through the window after night two, scoring, traveling a few miles down the road to score, then sneaking back into this is a detox unit.
Yeah.
This is a detox unit,
Yeah.
and for 4 consecutive nights, I'm climbing out the window, scoring, sneaking back in, and they all knew what was up, just how I was presenting.
Yeah.
And then I eventually kind of came clean. And yeah, they immediately kicked me out. And again, I was rough sleeping, and I was thinking, this is the end. I've really screwed this up. I was really naive. I thought I could click my fingers and rehab placements would just spring up around me,
Yeah.
and it doesn't work that way. I was very lucky to get those two placements, and they weren't going to give me a third opportunity. So I was really in trouble.
That must have been
Um,
really scary.
yeah,
You
really, really,
rehab,
really.
you know it's going to work, but you've had two goes and it hasn't. You're homeless. Like that must have really felt like, uh-oh.
Especially once you've had a taste of recovery.
Yeah.
Once you've had a taste of it and you've seen it is possible, because half the battle is believing it's possible.
Yeah.
And when you've been exposed to it and you've seen people who've shown you it is possible, and then you mess up again,
Yeah.
that really sticks a knife in. So I was in a really, really bad place at that point, and I'm ready to chuck it all in. And then these weird quirks of fate. So my mum desperately was looking for somewhere else I could go, and she found this kind of Christian-run men's rehab in North Devon. It was in the middle of Exmoor, and it was just out the area. And she booked me a National Express coach ticket, and I needed a lot of drugs to get on that coach that
Yeah.
day. I kind of manipulated a lot of drugs out of people just to get on that coach because I was so nervous, didn't know what I was walking into.
Yeah.
And I landed in North Devon 6 years ago, and they drove me out to the middle of nowhere to this rehab, which was really just a kind of supported accommodation with a bit of a Christian element to it. And I just thought I'd run the jackpot. It was in
Mm.
this. But prior to that, I was living in these kind of quite rough, kind of quite naughty estates in Birmingham, and then I landed in the middle of Exmoor National Park on this beautiful farm with sheepdogs there and some lambs in the field there. This beautiful big house with its own little gym. We had these little groups and a little prayer meeting in the morning, but that was kind of it. Other than that, you were kind of helping out, doing little odd jobs, and you could stay there for as long as you wanted. And I
Yeah.
just, there were bits of it weren't perfect, but for me, I thought I'd hit the jackpot,
Yeah.
and it gave me the time I needed. You know, those first few weeks in recovery are quite tough. I kind of experienced this kind of pink fluffy cloud moment some people talk about, where I've done my withdrawal, I've detoxed,
Yeah.
I'm drug free now. That doesn't last long. That usually followed a bit of a slump for me,
Mm.
preceded a bit of a slump for me, and I needed that time in a safe place where I could just kind of ride that out, and have support around me and be kept busy, and I just got that opportunity to have a fresh start. um yeah, so I stayed there for 12 months, and then thought I quite like it around here. Yeah, I'm gonna stick around. And then I was just looking out for things I could do, and I think one of the lessons in recovery I learned was, find people who have been there and done it and come out the other side, and just kind of do what they did.
Yeah.
Instead
Yeah.
of trusting my own thinking and my own logic, which was still a bit faulty, and would have took me into some weird and wonderful places. I made an effort to find people who had been there and done it, and I just kind of followed their advice, and
Yeah.
did what they suggested, really, because my way obviously hadn't worked up until that point. And there were a lot of people saying, well, don't rush back into work, maybe take a bit of time, and maybe give a little bit something back. You've got to build yourself back up slowly. And I reached out to Together, because they had a volunteering vacancy, and I was really shocked when they kind of accepted me after a brief interview. But I was only a volunteer for a number of weeks, because then a support worker role came up, which was
Yeah.
like an entry level position, really. So I applied for that on the off chance. I hadn't been in recovery for long. I was only probably 18 months drug free at that point. And I thought, I could have sworn that, I, I, I guess there would have been some kind of rule that you'd need 5 years sobriety
Yeah.
before you could work in the field, but that wasn't the case, and they were willing to give me a chance. And so, yeah, I got the job, and I really loved it. I loved the way the service was what I'd kind of always hoped it would be. I didn't really get that exposure in the Midlands to real treatment. I did maybe a bit towards the end, but so much of it felt like it was just a script, nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, like I'd been in recovery, I've been in treatment on and off for 20 years, and I didn't have groups suggested to me.
Yeah.
Wasn't told what NA was. I didn't
Yeah.
know what smart recovery was. I was just given a bit of basic harm reduction information in the scripts,
And
and
that's
was
it.
told to kind of turn up once a month to give a drug screen. That was kind of it. Whereas Together and other services now, because it's all changed for the
It's
better.
changed so much from your time, is it? If you think about the late
Yeah.
90s, it's changed so much now,
I mean,
hasn't
when I
it?
first started on a script, if you gave two consecutive positive drug screens, they'd kick you off your script. And then it changed, and then it went back and forth, and now there's a bit more of an understanding that it needs to be more than that. And yes, we're not perfect, but we definitely try and do a lot more than that. And
Yeah.
it was just really nice being able to use turn what I'd gone through into something for good,
Yeah.
and it gave me a head start as well. I felt really confident speaking to some of our opiate service
Yeah.
users, people who are stuck on a script, and people who are scared of detox and rehab. And I really loved that chance to talk about, what I'd gone through, and support them with their journeys. And it just felt a real privilege. Um, and yeah, so then I went to another role, at Together, as a recovery worker, holding a caseload of clients, seeing people one to one. And yeah, I just loved it. I've got this really nice sense of gratitude that I hope I don't ever lose,
Yeah.
for the opportunity I got, and how quickly those opportunities came. That's what's kind of blown me away. 6 years in recovery isn't a long time at all, and you just have to keep going, and it's amazing how those opportunities pop up, and you're better placed to take advantage of them. And within 2 or 3 years, I'd gone from, street homeless, sleeping in a tatty sleeping bag outside a pound stretcher, in Birmingham, to having my own little place, my own little dog and my little cat, and my
Yeah.
lovely job that means the world to me, and my lovely
Yeah.
partner. And it didn't take long. I was very lucky, I guess, but I'm sure not everyone gets it. But I guess what I'm saying is I managed to build a life a lot quicker than I thought.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
didn't take me 10, 20 years. Things started to coming together once I was doing the right things. the universe just kind of laid opportunities out for me, it
Yeah.
seemed.
But you took
Um,
them opportunities, didn't you?
yeah,
That's a
well,
really
yeah,
big thing in recovery, isn't it? Is if that chance is presented to you, you kind of got to
yeah, and
take it.
I think it was because one of the big lessons in recovery for me was you can't have it on your terms. If you want to get well, you're going to have to do things you don't want to do. You're
Yeah.
going to have to get used to being a bit uncomfortable, whether it's being uncomfortable during a detox or being uncomfortable afterwards when your anxiety spikes or being uncomfortable walking into a group for the first time. There is no getting around that.
Mm.
It's a serious health condition, but there's no magic pill, there's no magic script, but he's going to make it all painless and easy. And
Yeah.
there's going to be some trials and tribulations along the way.
Yeah.
And for me, that was it. It was the anxiety and that uncomfortableness of doing things, I never thought I'd be able to do, but knowing deep down I had to do them if I really wanted to take this seriously. And that stood me in good stead in my career now, I think, because I do things as part of my work role which are really scary.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
presenting to big groups of people and delivering training and supporting people who are going through some really tough stuff, and it's uncomfortable and it's hard and it
Yeah.
makes me anxious, but I know that anxiety can be pushed through, and
Yeah.
I know my anxiety is a liar. My anxiety lies to me. My
Mm.
anxiety tells me this is going to be horrendous or impossible, or I'm going to make a mess of that. And it's a liar. 99%
Yeah.
of the time it lies to me. And going through recovery kind of proved that point to me. And I think once you can, especially if you're an anxious kind of person, if you can learn that lesson and push through it, it's amazing what's
Yeah.
possible. It
That
really is.
is that is so valuable, Adam, because you obviously we meet so many people who I often think that the anxiety and the fear is what keeps them in the place where they are.
Yeah,
And there is something about that, like addiction and anxiety, it's so heavily linked and it
yeah,
wants to keep you where you are. And like you say, it lies to you. And that being brave and pushing through that uncomfortableness and that anxiety, the rewards at the end of it are huge, aren't they?
well, some people describe it as a fear-based illness,
Yeah,
and that rings true for me.
yeah,
That fear of change, that fear of stepping out my nice little comfortable bubble is the only thing I know. Keeps a lot of people trapped, and it kept me trapped
yeah,
for a long, long time. And it was, I always thought finding abstinence or true recovery would be really impossible, or super, super hard. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't as hard
yeah.
as I thought. Once I learned
One as
that
hard as you
lesson,
thought it was.
yeah, it wasn't, no, it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. It wasn't easy. I'm not saying that, but once I pushed through that initial bit about, yeah, oh, I'm scared and I'm anxious and I'm wound up, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah,
Once I'd kind of got that kind of mindset, um, it just kind of snowballed from
yeah,
there really, really quickly. Um, so that's I know that was probably a lot of waffle, but that's generally my story. It's not a typical one, but it's not that unusual either. I've
no,
noticed through my kind of time working it together. I still have to pay attention to myself. I really had to work on my self-awareness and pay attention to what's in my head and how that kind of that kind of faulty thinking can slip back in if I'm
mm,
not careful. And I do have to have a bit of a routine, and I do have to kind of prioritize my self-care. And I do need to try and, even after 5, 6 years, maintain a support network.
yeah,
I don't go to 12-step meetings anymore, but I've kind of built my own kind of program, if you like. I've
yeah,
took
yeah,
bits from everywhere. I had to be one of the biggest kind of tips I'd say is just be open-minded and try all these suggestions that you
yeah,
get, try them all, and trying them doesn't mean just going to one group, sitting at the back and not opening your mouth and
yeah,
saying, oh yeah, I tried it and it wasn't for
yeah,
me,
yeah,
which is what I've done. I've done that so many times. Trying it is going 10 times and taking a chance and opening
yeah,
your mouth and introducing yourself and trying to strike up some small talk with someone and actually, looking for the people who have been there and done it and come out the other side, but have present the way you want to present and
yeah.
make a
Finding
beeline
the
for those
winners.
people.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah, exactly. Instead of doing what I used to do, which was make a beeline for the most messed up person
yeah,
there and strike up a friendship with them.
yeah,
Because that felt easier, and I have to be aware of not always looking for the easy way out. That part of me is
yeah.
still there. It still looks for shortcuts and it still gets quite avoidant if I let it.
And quick
Um,
fixes and things like that. I really think that we see that so often, don't we? That kind of I went to one meeting, it wasn't for me sort of thing, and it's that
Yeah,
easier, the addiction like really suggests the easy route all the time, and you have to push through it.
yeah, and I do get it because the first time I went to rehab, I didn't have a choice. I couldn't opt out of groups.
No.
So I was forced into daily groups in the rehab unit, and I was forced to go to evening 12-step meetings. And that was good for me because I think if it was left to my own devices,
Yeah.
a couple of times, like my mum had dropped me off at a meeting and I'd hung around the door and not walked in, that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
I think that did me a favour, definitely, because otherwise I don't know whether I ever would have had the gumption to just do it on my own steam. I think I
Yeah.
needed that. Yeah, and I do hold some regrets. Definitely, I wish I hadn't left it as long as I did. I kept kidding myself that, I'll start taking it seriously when I'm 20, or if I'm still using when I'm 25, I'll ask about rehab, or if I'm
That
still
tomorrow
using when I'm
thing.
30,
Yeah.
I'll do this or I'll do that. And it gets harder the longer you leave. It gets harder. You're dealing with
Yeah.
more consequences. I'm dealing with this horrible health condition now, with emphysema. My breathing's quite bad, as you can probably tell, and I've got to have surgery. And if I took things more seriously and stopped trying to do it my way a little bit
Yeah.
earlier, I wouldn't be facing some of those consequences I am now. So
Yeah.
don't put it off. Would be my big advice. Don't try and do it on your own. Would be the other. Don't expect it to all be comfortable. You do have to push yourself and challenge yourself if you want to get out of this, but you can get out of it. And it is
Yeah.
not going to be as hard as your head tells you it's going to be. You
Yeah.
just have to be ready to get honest,
Yeah.
ready to get uncomfortable, and ready to step outside your comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How
that's
do
me.
you? So it's a really common thing I hear is in people in recovery having that kind of regret over things that happened during their using or how long it went on for. How do you manage that? How do you manage that kind of regret?
Um, I have to make the effort to flip my perspective on it. I always remember in early recovery when I first landed in Devon. My I'd be all right during the day, then my head would hit the pillow, and this kind of tidal wave of regrets and you know uh, things I was ashamed of would come
Yeah.
kind of pouring out of me at night and rattling around my own head.
Mm.
And I just had to take the time, and a bit of therapy helped me with this, to just reframe my perspective and just be kinder to myself.
Yeah.
And it can always be worse. For a start. I'm still very lucky. I've had a lot of friends I met along the way who aren't with us anymore,
Yeah.
and didn't get to find any recovery and left it too long, or just didn't have the luck that I had. And just be kind, just be kinder to myself. I'm a human being. I went through some stuff. None of us are perfect. I made mistakes, but I didn't stop trying. And I just had to. I think it helped when I built myself back up a bit with some volunteering and the kind of work I do, and other ways I try to make amends and give something back. I learned to like myself again,
Yeah.
and that made it easier to
Yeah.
to cut myself some slack for the things I
Mm.
got wrong along the way.
Yeah. Compassionate thinking and
Yeah,
compassionate acts is so important, isn't it, for that sort of stuff?
yeah, I think so.
So anyone listening today, Adam, who is where you were once upon a time and wants to make a change and wants to kind of move out of this and addiction and active addiction and into recovery, what would you say to them, someone listening today who wants it but frightened, scared, might not know how? What would you say to them?
I'd say I'd kind of repeat what I've said already. I think that it's not as scary as your anxiety tells you it's going to be. It's possible for everyone. It's never too late, but you have got to stop kind of deceiving yourself. It's very easy as part of this condition to deceive yourself, um, and tell yourself that you can do it on your own. You cannot do it alone.
Yeah.
You need connections, you need support. It is all out there for you. It's literally laid out for you. No matter where you are in the world, there is support available for you, and it's not as scary as you think it's going to be. And it is amazing how quick your life can transform when you take that kind of brave first step. And I do get it, because it was bloody terrifying putting my hand up and asking for help and referring in for support. But the people who do offer support, whether that's in groups or in services like ours, they get it.
Yeah.
And they're kind, caring people. All they want to do is help. They are not going to judge you. Um, and it is a real privilege working in this field, because you get to see, I get to see my own journey, but I get to see the transformations
Yeah.
happen, and they happen, and they happen
Yeah.
quite quickly.
Yeah.
It's amazing how quick, our life can turn around, and how much difference can take place in
Yeah.
just like 12 months or so. It's like
Yeah.
miraculous. And that can be you as well,
Yeah.
but you've got to get honest. You've got to take a chance. You've got to accept that some of it's going to be uncomfortable and new to you, and you are going to have to step out your comfort zone. But anyone can do it. At my worst, I was a pretty sad, lonely, lost kind of creature with no hope at all. And just by not giving up, and taking that chance, um, kind of saved me really. So I'd
Yeah.
say that without waffling on too much more.
Yeah. It is. It's belief, isn't it? You got
Yeah.
to believe that there's a better life for you.
Yeah, and well, just get around people who have been there and done it. And
Yeah.
this is why people bang the drum about groups and things like 12-step groups. So even if the 12-step programs aren't for you, it's the one place you can go and meet people who are actually in recovery.
Yeah. Yeah.
I never met anyone. None of my friends ever got clean, and none of my friends ever found recovery. The only place I met them was in rehab units and in groups. That's where
Yeah.
these people were.
Yeah.
And that's where I met people who had actually walked the walk and kind of come out the other side. And I could see they were showing me photos of what they looked 2 years ago, and I'm looking at the person in front of me now, and I needed that shoved in my face to show me that
Yeah.
it was possible, and that anyone and that people can do it. And I needed that, and I wouldn't have got that if I'd stayed doing it on my own little way,
Yeah.
or avoiding support and help and just trying to do it myself. I wouldn't have got that, and I desperately needed that, and that was the start of a kind of game changer for me, really, just seeing the evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the good news now is you don't even have to go to a group necessarily. There's so much online content about
Yeah.
recovery, like,
Yeah.
like this podcast, for instance. You just need to make the time and effort to fill your mind with recovery content, and that
Yeah.
recovery is possible, and that
And
people.
visible
Yeah,
recovery.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Amazing. Adam, thank you so much for your time
No, thank you.
today. I really, really, really enjoyed doing that with you. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, mate.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Brilliant.